The heartbreaking story of Logan Marr is one of the most tragic examples of how failures in the foster care system can lead to devastating consequences. Logan Marr, a 5-year-old girl from Maine, was placed in the foster care of Sally Schofield, a former caseworker for the Department of Human Services, and tragically lost her life in January 2001. The case sparked outrage nationwide and raised critical questions about the flaws within child welfare services. This post examines the details of Logan's life, the events leading up to her death, and the broader implications for the foster care system. Logan Marr was born in 1995 to her mother, Christy Baker, who struggled with parenting due to personal challenges. Christy was a young mother, dealing with her own history of trauma and instability, including mental health issues and struggles with substance abuse. Because of these factors, Logan and her younger sister, Bailey, were removed from Christy's care by Maine's Department of Human Services and placed into the foster care system. Christy Baker's difficulties were not uncommon, and like many parents involved with child protective services, she worked toward reunification with her children. The Department of Human Services allowed supervised visits between Christy and her daughters, but over time, concerns about Christy's ability to provide a stable home mounted. Despite Christy's efforts to improve her situation, the decision was ultimately made to place Logan and her sister in long-term foster care. Sally Schofield was not an ordinary foster parent. As a former caseworker for the Department of Human Services, she had experience in the child welfare system and was entrusted with Logan and Bailey's care. Schofield had taken on the role of foster parent for several children before, but Logan's case was unique. Schofield had advocated for the placement of the girls with her and had even pushed for the termination of Christy's parental rights, asserting that the children were better off in her care. Schofield, seen as a competent and trustworthy caregiver by many within the Department of Human Services, seemed like an ideal choice to care for Logan and Bailey. However, behind closed doors, Schofield exhibited controlling and authoritarian behavior. She adhered to strict discipline methods, often going beyond what was considered acceptable or humane. Logan's time in Schofield's care was brief, but it was during this time that she experienced intense suffering. Schofield, who believed in maintaining strict discipline, used harsh punishment tactics when Logan acted out. On January 31, 2001, things took a horrifying turn. Logan, upset and resistant to Schofield's authority, was subjected to what Schofield referred to as a method of time out. In an extreme and abusive form of discipline, Schofield used duct tape to restrain Logan, wrapping it around her mouth and securing her to a high chair in the basement. Logan, unable to breathe properly, suffocated and died. The horrific nature of her death shocked everyone involved, and it quickly became clear that this was no accidental death. After realizing Logan was unresponsive, Schofield attempted to cover up the incident. She called 911 and initially claimed that Logan had fallen and died accidentally. However, the paramedics and authorities who arrived on the scene were immediately suspicious. The details of Logan's position, the duct tape, and the discrepancies in Schofield's story led investigators to suspect foul play. The investigation into Logan's death revealed a tragic story of abuse and neglect. Sally Schofield's attempt to cover up her actions unraveled quickly. Autopsy results confirmed that Logan had died of asphyxiation due to the duct tape over her mouth, and it was evident that her death was not an accident but the result of intentional harm. Schofield was arrested and charged with manslaughter. During her trial, the prosecution argued that Schofield had used excessive force and abusive tactics to discipline Logan, ultimately causing her death. The case shocked the public, particularly because Schofield was not only a foster parent but also a former Department of Human Services caseworker. Someone who was supposed to protect children from harm, not inflict it. The trial highlighted serious issues within Maine's foster care system, particularly the lack of oversight and accountability for foster parents, even those with a professional background like Schofield. Witnesses, including other foster children who had been in Schofield's care, testified about her rigid and punitive approach to discipline. Schofield's defense team argued that Logan's death was an accident, claiming that Schofield had only intended to discipline her and that things had gone tragically wrong. However, the jury found that the evidence of abuse was overwhelming, and in December 2002, Sally Schofield was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 20 years in prison, with a possibility of parole after 17 years. Logan Marr's death was not just a personal tragedy, it also revealed systemic failures within Maine's child welfare system. The fact that Logan was placed in the care of a former caseworker, who had previously advocated for stricter standards in foster care, highlighted the inherent flaws in how the system operated. Sally Schofield had been entrusted with Logan's care despite red flags in her behavior and a lack of proper oversight. The case raised questions about how foster parents were selected, monitored, and held accountable. It also emphasized the potential dangers of power imbalances in the foster care system, where a former Department of Human Services worker was able to manipulate the system and use her authority to her advantage. The media attention surrounding Logan's death put a spotlight on Maine's Department of Human Services, leading to reforms in the way the department handled foster care placements. There was increased scrutiny on the vetting process for foster parents and stricter guidelines for monitoring the treatment of children in foster homes. Logan's mother, Christy Baker, was devastated by her daughter's death. She had struggled to regain custody of Logan and Bailey, and while she was never able to bring Logan home, her fight for justice for her daughter was unwavering. Logan, a bright and beautiful 5-year-old girl, was failed by a system that was supposed to protect her. Her death at the hands of her foster mother, Sally Schofield, not only revealed the deep flaws in Maine's foster care system but also served as a call to action for change.